Listen, if you can't control your emotions, you don't control your life. That's the raw truth nobody wants to hear. People think they're free. They think they're independent. But if your happiness, your actions, and your decisions depend on how you feel in the moment, you're not free. You're a slave to your moods, your hormones, your stress, your fear, your anger. And the worst part is, the world rewards people who can keep their cool while everyone else is losing their minds. The world doesn't care if you're sad or angry. The world doesn't care if your feelings are hurt. The world cares if you can get the job done. But let's be real. Most people don't even realize how emotional they are. Their whole life is dictated by feelings. I don't feel like working today, so I won't. I feel tired, so I'll stay in bed. I feel angry, so I'll shout at someone. That's how the average person lives, and then they're shocked when their life is a disaster. You want to know why your relationships are falling apart, why your bank account is empty, why your opportunities disappear? Because you keep letting emotions make decisions for you. And emotions are terrible decision makers. There was a study by the American Psychological Association that found 76% of people's stress comes from fear of the future. Think about that. People are losing sleep, gaining weight, destroying their mental health over things that haven't even happened yet. You're literally getting depressed over a movie you made up in your head. That's how weak emotional control has made society. Let me give you an example. You ever see those people who lose their mind in public over something small? Like the guy screaming at the McDonald's worker because the ice cream machine is broken again. He's red in the face, veins popping out, screaming at a teenager making minimum wage. 5 minutes later, the machine is still broken. His blood pressure is through the roof and he looks like a clown in front of everyone. That's what losing emotional control does. It doesn't fix the problem, it just makes you look weak. Nobody respects the guy who can't control himself. Because true strength isn't about throwing a punch or screaming at someone. It's about not doing it, even when you want to, even when you easily could. Science backs this up. Harvard researchers studied emotional regulation, the ability to stay calm under stress, and they found people who mastered it were better problem solvers, had stronger relationships, and even made more money. Another study in psychological science found that people with strong emotional control had a 34% higher chance of long-term success in leadership. You think CEOs, military generals, or world leaders got to the top by panicking? No. They got there because they could stay cool while everyone else folded. Now let's talk real life. Imagine a pilot flying a plane. Suddenly there's turbulence, alarms going off, people screaming. If the pilot panics, if he yells, "We're all gonna die," then everyone actually dies. But if he keeps his cool, follows the process, trusts his training, he saves hundreds of lives. Now replace that with your life. Every time you panic, every time you get angry, every time you let fear or sadness control you, you're crashing your own plane. Not physically, but mentally, financially, socially, you're going down. And the truth is, the world is designed to make you emotional. Companies spend billions making sure you're hooked on feelings. Why do you think social media apps are free? Because you're the product. Every notification, every like, every comment is designed to make you feel something. Dopamine when someone likes your post, sadness when nobody does, anger when you see someone with a life better than yours. A survey by Deloitte showed 59% of Gen Z and millennials admit social media makes them anxious. That means half the younger generation is depressed because of pixels. Not reality, not actual life, just pixels. So how do you fix this? First thing, awareness. Most people don't even notice when they're triggered. The next time you're angry, upset, or stressed, pause. Literally say to yourself, "I'm feeling this way. Why?" That pause is the difference between sending a text you'll regret for years and keeping your dignity. That pause is the difference between slapping someone and walking away a bigger man. Second, detach from the noise. If your entire mood is dictated by what you see on a screen, you'll never control your emotions. If Instagram makes you feel bad, log off. If the news makes you angry, stop watching it. If your group chat is full of negativity, mute it. Half your emotions aren't even yours. They're being fed to you. Control what enters your mind, and you'll have a chance of controlling how you feel. Third, control your body. You can't sit around eating junk, never moving, and expect to control your mind. Your brain is part of your body. There's a reason why when you exercise, your stress goes down. There's a reason why when you push through discomfort in the gym, you're calmer under pressure in life. If you can stay calm when a heavy barbell is trying to crush you, you can stay calm when your boss yells at you. Physical control leads to emotional control. Another key is reframing failure. Most emotional breakdowns come from not being able to handle setbacks. But failure isn't the end, it's the process. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. Imagine if he cried and gave up after the third attempt. You'd be sitting in darkness right now. Failure is feedback, that's all. The faster you accept that, the faster you'll stop crying when life smacks you around. And here's a trick, use humor. Life will punch you in the face no matter what. Your flight gets canceled, your laptop crashes, you spill coffee on yourself before an interview. Laugh. Seriously, laugh. Because anger doesn't fix it. Crying doesn't fix it. But laughing makes you stronger than the situation. People respect the person who can laugh in chaos, not the one who breaks down. You want a relatable example? Think about the last time you made a stupid decision. Was it logical or was it emotional? That text you shouldn't have sent, that was emotion. That money you wasted on something useless, that was emotion. That relationship you stayed in way too long, that was emotion. Almost every regret you have is tied to emotion. Control that and you eliminate half the stupidity in your life. And let me drop another fact. A study from the University of California found that people who could delay gratification, basically control their impulses, were not only happier but healthier and more successful in life. This is the same concept proven by the famous marshmallow test, where kids were told they could eat one marshmallow now, or wait and get two later. The kids who waited ended up with better grades, better careers, and even lower rates of obesity. Why? Because they controlled their emotions. They didn't give in to the feeling of "I want it now." That's the whole game. You win in life by mastering that small moment of emotion. Here's the brutal truth: you either own your emotions or your emotions own you. If you own them, you can think clearly, make smart moves, stay disciplined, and win. If you don't, you're just a puppet. Anger pulls the strings, sadness pulls the strings, fear pulls the strings, and puppets don't build empires. Puppets don't get respected. Puppets don't win. So when life throws something at you, understand that your reaction is the only thing you truly control. You can't control the weather, the traffic, or other people, but you can control how you respond. That's power. That's freedom. Most people think emotions are natural and therefore they should be followed. That's the biggest scam you've ever been sold. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true, and it definitely doesn't mean you should act on it. Think about how many times you've been wrong about what you felt. You thought someone was ignoring you when they were just busy. You thought you were in love when really you were just lonely. You thought quitting was the right choice because you were frustrated, but if you had stuck with it another week, you would have seen progress. Feelings lie all the time. They're not facts, they're impulses. And the smarter you get, the more you realize your emotions are like a drunk friend giving you bad advice at 3 a.m. Loud, convincing, but usually wrong. People who fail in life don't usually fail because of lack of intelligence. They fail because of lack of control. Someone gets angry and burns a bridge they can't rebuild. Someone gets scared and never takes the opportunity that would have changed their life. Someone gets sad and spends months drowning in misery instead of fighting back. That's what destroys lives. Not a lack of talent, but a lack of emotional discipline. Think about road rage. Someone cuts you off in traffic. What do? The average person loses their mind, honks, screams, maybe even chases the guy. That's how you end up in jail, or worse. For what? Because you couldn't handle a stranger doing something you didn't like? That's how fragile people have become. You can't call yourself strong if a random driver has the power to ruin your whole day. That's weakness disguised as toughness. You know who else profits from your lack of control? Marketers. They know you buy on emotion, not logic. Why do you think commercials always show smiling families, sexy models, or people living their best life? Because they're not selling you a product, they're selling you a feeling. That's why Americans alone spend over $14 billion every year on self-help books and programs. Not because they don't know what to do, but because they're emotional addicts looking for the next hit of motivation instead of building discipline. If you can't control your emotions, companies will control them for you, and you'll hand them your wallet while smiling like it was your idea. There was a survey done by CNBC that showed 70% of Americans have made impulse purchases they later regretted, with the average regret costing around $300. That's not small change. That's groceries for a month, a car payment, or money that could have been invested. But people throw it away because they can't stop themselves from chasing a feeling in the moment. Multiply that across a lifetime, and you're not just broke, you're stuck. Because while you're wasting money on emotional shopping, someone else is investing and controlling their future. And it's not just money, it's relationships too. Most relationships fail because people can't control emotions. Someone gets jealous, they accuse. Someone gets angry, they insult. Someone gets insecure, they pull away. All emotions. Do you know how many people have destroyed marriages, friendships, or business partnerships because of one emotional outburst? More than you can imagine, but you don't hear about it because nobody brags about how their lack of control ruined their life. They just live in quiet misery and pretend it wasn't their fault. Let me tell you a funny but painful truth. Everyone thinks they're logical until something emotional hits them. The guy who claims to be rational suddenly loses his mind when his girlfriend doesn't text back in 5 minutes. The woman who says she's calm and spiritual loses her cool when someone cuts in front of her at Starbucks. The businessman who says he's disciplined throws it all away gambling because he got emotional over one loss. Everyone talks about control until life slaps them. Then we see who's real and who's not. And here's the kicker. Emotions aren't bad. They're signals. Anger can show you something's wrong. Fear can warn you of danger. Sadness can tell you something matters to you, but they're not supposed to be the driver of your life. They're supposed to be the passenger. If you let them take the wheel, they'll drive you straight into a wall. If you let them sit in the back seat and you stay in control, they can actually help you. There's a reason athletes train under pressure. You think a UFC fighter doesn't feel fear before walking into the cage?
Of course he does. But he's trained himself to control that fear. If he let it take over, he'd never step foot in the arena. Same with soldiers, same with entrepreneurs, same with anyone at the top of their field. The feeling never goes away, but they've mastered the ability to act despite it. That's emotional control. Here's a fact from Stanford University. People who learned techniques to regulate emotions had a 30% improvement in focus and decision-making compared to those who didn't. That means while the emotional person is paralyzed, the controlled person is still moving forward. Multiply that advantage over weeks, months, years, and it's not even close. The calm, disciplined person wins every time. Now let's talk about humor again, because this is powerful. You ever notice how comedians take painful situations and turn them into laughter? That's why they're so popular. Because deep down, everyone wishes they could do that with their own problems. Imagine if you turned every setback into a joke instead of a breakdown. Instead of crying because you lost your job, you laughed at how life threw you a plot twist and started planning your next move. That's power. That's emotional control, because you're showing life that you're bigger than whatever it throws at you. Most people, though, are addicted to emotional drama. Look at reality TV. Why is it so popular? Because people love watching others lose control. The screaming matches, the crying, the chaos. Why? Because it makes them feel better about their own lack of control. It's like fast food for the brain. Tastes good in the moment, but makes you weaker in the long run. Instead of laughing at other people's breakdowns, maybe fix your own. And here's the secret. You don't fix emotions by suppressing them. That doesn't work. If you bottle up anger, it explodes later. If you bottle up sadness, it leaks out as depression. The key isn't to deny emotions, it's to acknowledge them and then decide consciously what to do. You can be angry and still choose not to punch someone. You can be sad and still choose to show up and work. You can be scared and still move forward. That's real strength. Let me hit you with something raw. Almost every regret you have is tied to emotion. That fight you started, emotional. That stupid purchase, emotional. That opportunity you missed because you were scared, emotional. That toxic relationship you stayed in because you were lonely, emotional. Your life is a chain of decisions, and if those decisions are emotional, your life will be a mess. If you learn to pause, think, and act with logic instead of emotion, your entire future changes. There's this famous marshmallow experiment done with kids. Researchers gave them a marshmallow and said you can eat it now, or wait 15 minutes and get two. The kids who waited ended up doing better in life. Better grades, better jobs, healthier bodies. Why? Because they had emotional control. They didn't let the feeling of "I want it now" dictate their actions. That's the whole game of life in a nutshell. The ones who control their emotions win long term. The ones who give in to them lose. So ask yourself right now, how many times a day do you give in to emotion instead of logic? How many times do you skip something important because you don't feel like it? How many times do you say something stupid in anger? How many times do you waste money because you wanted a quick dopamine hit? That's your enemy, not the government, not your boss, not your family. Your emotions. Control them, and everything changes.
The funny thing about emotions is that they feel permanent when you're in them, but they never last. Think about it. The last time you were angry, it felt like the world was ending. An hour later, you were laughing at a meme or eating a burger and forgot why you were mad. The last time you were sad, it felt like you'd never recover. Then something distracted you and suddenly life wasn't so bad. The last time you were scared, it felt like the fear would paralyze you forever. Then you did the thing anyway and you realized it wasn't as bad as your brain made it out to be. Emotions are like waves. Big, powerful, overwhelming, but temporary. If you can learn to stand still while the wave passes instead of thrashing around, you'll always come out stronger. But most people don't know this. They think the emotion is permanent, so they make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. That's the most dangerous mistake you can make. Quitting your job because you had a bad day. Breaking up with someone because you were angry in the moment. Spending money you don't have because you felt like you deserved it. Permanent consequences from temporary emotions. That's why emotional control is the foundation of success. There was a study by Yale University that found emotional regulation training in schools led to a 23% improvement in academic performance and a 20% improvement in behavior. Think about that. Just teaching kids how to handle feelings makes them smarter and better behaved. Now imagine if adults actually learned the same lesson. But instead, most grown men and women are still walking around like emotional teenagers, throwing tantrums when life doesn't go their way. That's why their lives are stuck. You ever notice how the most successful people seem calm, even when chaos is happening? It's not because their lives are easier. In fact, their lives are harder. More pressure, more responsibility, more problems. But they've trained themselves not to flinch. That's why they're leaders. That's why people trust them. Because when everyone else is panicking, they're calm. That's real power. You can buy cars, houses, watches, but if you can't control your emotions, you're still broke on the inside. Here's something you need to understand. People respect emotional control more than they respect raw talent. Think about sports. The athlete who loses their cool, who gets technical fouls, who storms off the field, they lose respect no matter how skilled they are. But the athlete who stays calm under pressure,
who performs when it matters, who doesn't let emotions get in the way. That's the one remembered as a legend. That applies to everything: business, relationships, life. Now let's talk about stress. Stress is one of the biggest killers today. The American Institute of Stress reports that 77% of people experience stress that affects their physical health, and 73% experience stress that affects their mental health. Stress leads to heart disease, high blood pressure, and even weakens your immune system. But here's the thing: stress isn't caused by events, it's caused by your reaction to events. Two people can go through the same situation. One breaks down, the other thrives. What's the difference? Emotional control. Stress is just the brain saying, I can't handle this. But if you train your brain to say, I've got this, the stress fades. And here's where humor comes in again. You can laugh your way through stress. Scientists at Loma Linda University found that laughter reduces stress hormones like cortisol and boosts immune function. That's not just feel-good advice, that's hard science. So the next time life smacks you, laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it keeps you in control. Let's talk about fear. Fear is the biggest emotion holding people back. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment. Fear keeps people locked in jobs they hate, relationships that are toxic, lives that are small. And here's the truth: most of the things you fear will never even happen. According to a study published in the journal Behavior Research and Therapy, 85% of the things people worry about never happen. And of the 15% that do, most people handle them better than they expected. So basically, you're ruining your life over ghosts. Fear is fake. It's your brain playing tricks on you. And if you can control that, if you can act despite fear, you're already ahead of 90% of people. Let me give you an example. Public speaking is one of the most common fears. People panic at the thought of standing in front of a crowd. But what actually happens? You go up, you talk. Maybe you stumble. Maybe you sweat. But then it's over. Nobody dies. Nobody cares as much as you think they do. Fear made it seem 10 times bigger than it actually was. That's how fear always works. It's an emotional exaggeration. And you know what's crazy? People are more scared of temporary embarrassment than lifelong regret. They'd rather stay quiet and safe than risk looking stupid for 5 minutes. But the people who control that emotion, who push through, who act even when scared, those are the ones who change their lives. Everyone else just sits on the sidelines. Now, anger. Anger is the most destructive emotion when left unchecked. Wars have been started over anger. Families have been destroyed over anger. Careers ended. Lives ruined. All because someone couldn't control their temper. And yet, anger is also one of the most powerful fuels when controlled. Anger at your situation can push you to improve. Anger at injustice can push you to fight for change. The difference is whether you control it or it controls you. There's a famous quote: speak when you're angry and you'll make the best speech you'll ever regret. That's the truth. Words said in anger can't be taken back. Punches thrown in anger can't be undone. Decisions made in anger can haunt you forever. That's why emotional control is so valuable. It saves you from your worst self. But let's not pretend this is easy. Controlling emotions is hard. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. It's easy to meditate on a beach. It's hard to stay calm when your life is falling apart. It's easy to be positive when everything is going your way. It's hard to be strong when you're broke, heartbroken, or sick. But that's the whole point. Control only matters when things are hard. Anyone can smile when life is good. Strength is smiling when life is beating you down. And here's the thing: you can train emotional control just like you train your muscles. You don't go to the gym once and expect to be strong. You train consistently. Same with your emotions. Every time you pause before reacting, you're getting stronger. Every time you laugh instead of crying, you're getting stronger. Every time you act despite fear, you're getting stronger. Slowly you build the muscle of control, and one day it becomes second nature. A lot of people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. But at the core, discipline is emotional control. You don't want to wake up early, but you control that emotion and do it anyway. You don't want to work out, but you control that emotion and do it anyway. You don't want to keep working when you're tired, but you control that emotion and do it anyway. Discipline is just the ability to not let emotions dictate your actions. And let me be brutally honest here: the world doesn't care about your feelings. The world rewards results. If you can control your emotions, you can create results. If you can't, you'll have excuses. That's it. Your boss doesn't care if you were too sad to work. The market doesn't care if you were too scared to start your business. Your competition doesn't care if you were too tired to train. Life doesn't care. Only results matter. So if you're sitting there right now, thinking you're unlucky, thinking the world is against you, thinking nothing goes your way, maybe it's not the world. Maybe it's you. Maybe your emotions have been steering the ship for too long, and you need to take the wheel. Because the second you take control, everything changes. Not instantly, but consistently. And consistency is what builds greatness.
The truth about emotions is that they're not going anywhere. You'll never eliminate fear, anger, sadness, or stress completely. Anyone telling you they're always positive, always happy, always calm is lying. The difference between the average person and the person in control isn't that one feels emotions and the other doesn't. It's that one knows how to act in spite of them. Emotional control doesn't mean you become a robot. It means you become the master of your own mind. Imagine how different your life would look if you didn't let emotions run the show. How many goals would you have achieved by now if you didn't quit every time you felt unmotivated? How much money would you have saved if you didn't spend impulsively to feel better for 5 minutes? How many relationships would you have saved if you didn't say that one stupid thing out of anger? How much stronger would you be if you stopped letting sadness convince you to lie in bed all day? Your life would be unrecognizable. That's the power of control. There's a reason people admire Stoics throughout history. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, dealt with war, betrayal, loss, and still kept his calm. Why? Because he understood the truth. You can't control the world, but you can control yourself. That's timeless wisdom. Thousands of years later, it's still the secret. Technology changes, society changes, but the human brain is the same. Control yourself and you win. Lose control and you lose everything. But here's the funny thing. Controlling your emotions actually makes your emotions better. When you're not ruled by anger, you actually feel more peace. When you're not crushed by fear, you actually feel more courage. When you don't drown in sadness, you actually feel more joy. Control isn't suppression, it's direction. You're taking that raw energy and using it to build instead of destroy. You're not shutting emotions off, you're making them work for you. And let's not forget, people are watching you, your kids, your friends, your coworkers. They're watching how you react. If you lose your mind every time something goes wrong, you're teaching them weakness. But if you stay calm, composed, and strong, you're teaching them resilience. Leadership isn't about telling people what to do. It's about showing them how to be. And the best leaders in families, in business, in life are the ones who can control their emotions when everyone else can't. You want respect? Control your emotions. You want success? Control your emotions. You want freedom? Control your emotions. Because when you control yourself, nobody else can control you. Not the government, not the media, not your boss, not your partner, not strangers on the internet. You become untouchable. People can try to trigger you, distract you, break you, but they can't because you're in charge of you. That's freedom in its purest form. Now let me give you one last fact. A study published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology found that people with strong emotional regulation not only perform better at work and school, but also report significantly higher levels of overall life satisfaction. In other words, if you control your emotions, you don't just win more, you enjoy life more. Because instead of being dragged around by every feeling, you're steering the ship. And life feels better when you're the captain, not the passenger. So here's the final message. Stop being a puppet. Stop letting fear pull your strings. Stop letting anger pull your strings. Stop letting sadness pull your strings. Cut the strings and take control. Because every time you control your emotions, you take a step toward the life you actually want. Every time you let emotions control you, you take a step backward into weakness, regret, and mediocrity. Life will always throw challenges at you. That's guaranteed. But your reaction is always your choice. That's the one thing nobody can take from you. You get to decide if you panic or stay calm, if you quit or keep going, if you let emotions make you weak or let control make you strong. And the people who win in this world, the people who are respected, the people who are unstoppable, they're not the ones without emotions. They're the ones who've mastered them. So the next time you feel fear, act anyway. The next time you feel anger, pause before you speak. The next time you feel sadness, get up and move forward. The next time you feel stress, laugh at it. Because that's what control looks like. And if you can do that consistently, day after day, no matter what life throws at you, then you'll become the kind of person nobody can break. That's when you stop being average. That's when you stop being a victim. That's when you become untouchable. Control your emotions and you control your life. That's the truth. Everything else is just noise.